All right, we are live. Let me just pop out the chat. Oops. Oops, that is way too wide. There we go. Hello, everybody. Am I live? Is everybody here? Hello? Hello there, Ellen, Faith, Duty Bear, Pale Rider, Dragon Turtle, Sondar. Nice to see you. Anyone else having YouTube ignore you selecting the live chat? No. The head. Ah! Yeah, I know. Smooth. So smooth. First, the cheese. Hey, Jackson. The cheese, as always, the cheese. This is still my reserve freezer cheese. And I'm making my a cheese sandwich, which is what I do. It's wedging a piece of strong cheese between two crackers. So excuse me as I munch on this. Mmm. Aerodynamic, yeah. I've embraced my inner Morden Kanan finally. Ooh, that's good cheese. Good morning. My lore is my craft. That's true. Actually, what I wanted to do was share with you a little bit of the craft that I do. Because I started off as a crafting channel, right? That's why it's called the Mighty Glue Stick. It's named after glue stick. So, the reason why is what I do is I take a piece of 200 GSM paper. So that's like the largest sort of GSM that you can fit. Well, you can fit heavier stuff through your photocopier, but usually this is it. I use an Epson L355 integral reservoir ink reservoir printer. So it's got tanks on the side of it that you just refill with liquid ink. Incredibly cost effective. Hey, thanks, Stanchgate. Thank you very much. So this here is by what's this? By Stone's Edges. Well, it's basically print and cut and paste terrain. So what you do is you cut this out, you fold along the dotted and straight lines, and then you glue it together with just a piece of glue stick, and you come up with a wall like this. And using all of this, you can create entire dungeon scenes using just printed out stuff. You don't have to paint it. You basically just print it, cut it out, and stick it together. A toddler could do this as long as you trust them with some safety scissors. So yeah, it's really, really easy. And while DM Scotty and DMG and various others use cardboard, I use a little bit of cardboard. But I don't like painting cardboard because I find it warps and it's just a pain. And paint's quite expensive. Well, it can be. And also just the like using builder's foam and stuff. In New Zealand, builder's foam is actually really expensive. And foam core is actually quite expensive over in New Zealand, whereas printer paper and stuff is extremely cheap because we have like trade agreements with China. We're a wood producer, and paper's pretty cheap here. Ink is also very cheap when you use the Epson L355, and so I printed out and put together a lot of terrain just using paper. And I was somewhat like I got behind heroic maps. If you look at my very early videos on this channel, you'll see that I was talking about using just printed out stuff and building it up using cardboard underneath, and it's extremely cheap and easy. So yeah, that was why I got called the Mighty Glue Stick. The other thing that I do is I sculpt. So I use a combination of using tin foil, aluminum foil to make armatures. This is the start of a mine flare that I'm making. So aluminum foil. Then you cover that in a thin layer of Sculpey, like a skin, Yeah, that saves a lot of money in Sculpey. So you cover that in a thin layer of Sculpey, and then you can double bake Sculpey. So you can bake it and then you can stick more Sculpey to it and build it up just like any other sort of modelling clay medium. And then to do the really fine details and to give it added strength, I use 2-part epoxy putties, like green stuff, this is grey stuff. And then on top of that, to add slick effects, goo and tints and things to give it a more luminous sort of colour, I use just epoxy glue. And yeah, you can achieve quite amazing results with that. And that's what I do. So if you're interested in seeing more of that sort of stuff on my channel, I can always showcase some of the stuff that I make, and it would certainly encourage me to do more crafting. So yeah, I don't just do drawings and stuff, I also do sculpture, mainly. That's my main artwork. What's a China? You're not late. We've just started. Wasn't I a victim of an attempted mind flayer attack? No. The templates are, you can go to Fat Dragon Games, I think, has got, Fat Dragon has got print and plate. They do mainly 3D printing stuff now, but they've got a really good range of the printed paper stuff. And it's really cheap. You just buy the PDF files and you can print them off to your heart's content. You can also modify them if you wanted to add, because they're PDF files, so you can modify them to add like little details like corpses and stuff stuck to walls, or arcane drawings or anything like that. You can add on there if you want to. Yeah, and it's really cheap to do. They've got an entire village scene. So there's, I'm pretty sure Fat Dragon does most of that stuff. They've got Ravenfell, I think it is. Or Haven something. I'm terrible. I'll put links in the description under this video when we've finished, and you can go and find them to your heart's content. What are my opinions on old Draconic Zion the Dragon? Also been a subscriber for a while now, but still haven't gotten a tag on your Discord. Really? Oh, you mean like, so the members get special privileges on the Discord, otherwise people just generally, you know. It's the paid members that get access to the Gluminati and stuff. Just ordinary people who are just subscribed to the channel don't get any special privileges on the Discord, because it's free for anybody to join. Drawing Statchgate is just a matter of practice, honestly. Greetings, programs. Hey. Did anybody join Runehammer for his mixing live stream? That was awesome, man. I had a great time. Drawing maps is soothing. It's true. It's very zen. Sculpture over my right shoulder is a big red dragon. I don't generally move him because he's loaded up with, that's where I put all my spare change, my coins and stuff. We have gold coins in New Zealand, so I put him up there. Wondercraft and Illwinter are two that I like. That's awesome, Ian. If any of you want to put some crafting links on the Discord, just personally message me and I'll make a special board for them, and we can put all our crafting links there. It's true, the members do control the world. And the weather. Yep. Why is Morden Cannon operating a stream? It's true. So you may have guessed, right, from my last video, where I was talking about the balance and Obox-Ob and the precarious nature of the universe, that there was some Morden Cannon stuff going on. Get a spiderweb tattoo on my head? No. No, definitely not. The hat is still here. I can bring the hat back if you want. It's right here. but it's actually fairly warm in my room today. I've got a fresh mead brew going on in the closet behind me back there. I bought 30 kilos of honey, so I've got enough for like 15 batches of mead. Dragon Turtle, have you heard about the whole orcs equals racist thing? If so, any comment? Honestly, some people have to shove their ideology, religion into everything and ruin it. I don't think it's a religion. It's not a religion thing. I see what you mean, though. Ideology? Yeah, I don't know. The thing that interests me, 2 points. One is I'm mainly interested in the Forgotten Realms. In the Forgotten Realms, orcs were brought over from another world. So the Orc Gate Wars in Thay was where the second batch of orcs, the Thayan orcs, come from. Those are generally more civilized than the grey orcs from the Spine of the World Mountains, who were gated in possibly by elves or giants back in the time when the elves and the giants and the dragons were having a big war. And they are generally more savage species. So they're not native to the world of Toril, for one thing. So I kind of have a problem with the fact that they can interbreed with other races is a bit weird. Like, I know that Grumps is essentially said, look, be fecund and breed and stuff, and that gives them the ability to breed with diverse races. But biologically, they should be another species. They're not a race, they're a species. So I don't think that half orcs. I think the problem was in the actual fact that you could have half orcs in the first place. So that kind of implies that they're a race, not a species. If they couldn't interbreed with other things, then they'd just be like gnolls and things like that. You know, nobody has a problem with gnolls being monstrous. But they do have a problem with orcs being monstrous for some reason. The other thing that I find problematic with that whole orcs as a metaphor or an analog for real world issues is in the worlds that the orcs occupy, you also have people of colour. So what does that say about the people who are accusing people who make these worlds and operate their fantasies in these worlds that they're... You see what I mean? We're having to insert some monstrous race to assert those things when we have people of colour in those worlds in the first place, which they just completely ignore. So it's a very narrow and specific worldview, which I don't think takes into account all of the things. And also, the people who are playing and writing the games now are not Gary Gygax. We're not Tolkien. We're not the people who invented the concept of the orc, but the orcs are integral to the idea of these worlds. Sure, you can play your own personal game and not have orcs, or play them however you like, but the lore of the game is what I focus on this channel, and so I faithfully represent orcs as they've always been represented in Dungeons and Dragons. And that's about it, really. I don't have any personal bias either way. I'm not swayed by their arguments because I don't see things that way. I don't look at orcs as victims. They're a very strong martial and survivalist culture that lives up in the high Arctic regions of the world. They're incredible survivalists. They've survived genocide by the Netheril Empire. So, you know, whatever. I don't see them as victims or downcast or anything. They're one of the great conflicts of survival between the civilized races of the far north and the rest, you know. So it's a story of, like, if you want to think of them as like they're invasive colonists in themselves. If they could, they would take over the entire, you know, southern reaches of the continent of Faerun. So they're not sitting around waiting for somebody to come and attack them. They're the aggressors. So, you know. Yes, my hair is gone. It's been gone for a while. So yeah, I think it's a narrow viewpoint. It's a very politically motivated viewpoint. It's people getting offended for their own self-aggrandizement and social, you know, credit or whatever, and doesn't have much relevance to the game itself. Not only that, but the people who are mostly complaining about this sort of stuff are not really supporters of the game in the first place. I saw one tweet where somebody was celebrating the removal of Mike Mills as the head of D&D, and then they went on to say, I would never buy any D&D products in the first place. It's like, well, why do you have a vested interest in anything that goes on in the company? This is ridiculous. So my suggestion to companies is stop paying attention to these drama hounds and just get on with it. Real D&D fans do not give a shit about those sort of politics. I've ascended. Well, thanks, William. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time I've seen this argument on, Twitter is kind of a new thing, and the fact that it got a shout out on, there was an article in Psychology Today or something like that. Quite funny. Good evening, Jam the Ooze. Do I think that some orc tribes use raids to get rid of the dangerously stupid and aggressive orcs? Yes, absolutely. So that's one of the things is orcs overpopulate their regions and they use up all of their resources because they live in resource poor areas that they dominate. And what happens is the elder orcs in the tribe assert, and particularly the females in the orc tribe, assert that if you're not a warrior, if you're not an orc with some kills under your belt, then you're worthless. You're good for the defense of the tribe against other orcs, because orcs fight amongst themselves more often than not. And they send off the youth of the tribe to go and fight and raid, and a lot of them get killed. It reduces the population, it winnows down so that the most lucky or blessed of their gods or whatever survive. And it also furthers the political aims of those elder orcs who are left behind, who elevate themselves to shaman or whatever, So yeah, there's that aspect to it. They're not an allegory for other types of cultures. Orcs have their own culture. And it's developed over 40 years of storytelling. So, overflow, zerg, repeat. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. For most people, the majority of people, that stuff doesn't even cross their mind when they play. Orcs are orcs. And, so the idea, they're projecting this racism onto people or onto the hobby, that doesn't necessarily exist. So it's like, are there not enough real racists in the world for you to go and concentrate on, that you need to focus on something which is striving to bring people face to face together and share stories and unite people of diverse cultures? It's like, dude, pick your targets. There's real racists right now in the streets of America spreading viruses and stuff. Go after them, not some literary work from before anyone was born. Honestly. Their orc origin story is not from a random portal. No, it's not. They didn't randomly portal onto the world of Toril. They were brought over. So they were. I'm not entirely sure about the original orcs that came over, the grey orcs from the mountains and stuff. But the Thayan orcs, it was originally opened as a form of marshalling forces and stuff, so that a group of rogue wizards could take over the kingdom, sort of thing, the Empire of Thay. And that sort of backfired because the person who opened the portal kept it a secret and got killed in a battle before the portal could be closed. And so the gateway to the orc homeworld, wherever it was, whichever it was, stayed open, and a huge number of orcs came through and threatened to take over all of Thay and destabilize the entire region. They have since dispersed, and there is a group of civilized orcs who moved out into the south towards the Shah, and their whereabouts is currently unknown. But there is civilized orcs, and their culture is not warlike, and they exist in the further away from the Sword Coast, so they don't get a lot of attention. So not only that, but the people who are espousing this don't pay any attention to the actual lore, don't read into it, don't do their research, assert all of these things, and actually forget the fact that this is a complex body of literature. So yeah, it's the other thing that pisses me off. They're noobs. We don't know exactly why Mike Mills got removed, or removed himself. We don't know what the background story of that is. So until it's confirmed by Mike Mills or others who were actually there, I'm not venturing an opinion on it. He may have actually just gone on to develop lore for Magic the Gathering. Who knows? It's a big company. People move around in companies all the time. Do orcs change the way they look depending on environment? I don't think so. They do have they've got that sort of Warhammer 40k thing where they use they've got a different color template that they use for clothing and stuff, like their eyes see colors differently and things. Hobgoblins would be a more interesting argument to make. Yeah. Yeah, the Forgotten Realms definitely has a history of civilized orcs. And they do operate as mercenaries. That's true. Other than the D20 system, what is your favorite dice system? I actually prefer like the 2D10 system that they use for Rogue Trader and stuff like that. The Games Workshop Warhammer 40k universe stuff is really good. I cut my teeth on Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, Traveller, and the Palladium system. We started off with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then I sort of gravitated towards the Supers game, Heroes Unlimited, and became an absolute master at Heroes Unlimited and played it a lot. So we played AD&D, Heroes Unlimited, and Traveller sort of went out of favour because there wasn't any new sort of material being released for it. Well, I don't know. It was really hard for us to get hold of gaming material in the first place. We had one supplier that was operating in New Zealand, and they brought in batches of stuff along with all sorts of other board games, and it was really a complete mixed bag. Like, you never knew what was going to be on the shelves, so we're constantly checking for new material and stuff. We couldn't order stuff from overseas. It was just way too expensive. So yeah, it was really difficult. What? Mike Mills is doing an Indiegogo? I did not know that. Well, somebody brought up the orc thing, and I thought it was an interesting thing to talk about. Since, I know a lot about orcs in D&D. So if you wanted to ask anybody what their attitude was... Thanks, Zezek. Yeah, well, so slavery has been a large part of D&D world as well. Like, it's currently... if you read through this book, which is one of the most recent, there's 3 or 4 recent books which I'm reading through now to bring you some more up-to-date stuff on the outside of the Sword Coast Forgotten Realms. So Elements' Guide to the Forgotten Realms, which was written by Ed Greenwood, has got information about current slavery and the attitudes, like the Lord's Alliance and the various other nation states and things, where slavery is actually practiced and not. Like the Sea of Fallen Stars, if you fall out of favour with a noble, there is a chance that they will sick the slavers on you and then disavow all knowledge of it happening, sort of thing, but it's a known practice. Other really good books we've got is the Adventurers League Tales, so these are official D&D content. Lost Tales of Myth Draenor talks about Hillsfar and updates information on that area. And also this really wonderful book, the Adventurers League Rising Shadows Moonshae Isles Regional Guide, is also really good. It's got some great maps by Shea in here, Mr. Shea. Where is it? Moonshae Isles. Unicorn. Lovely. So yeah, I've been reading through those. And also we've got the Border Kingdoms, which is winging its way over here right now. And yeah, it's an exciting time for Forgotten Realms. So that unabashedly talks about Forgotten Realms culture and legal systems and taxation and nobility and how you become a noble and armies and stuff like that. It mainly focuses on Cormier and Sembia and the sort of central states and Tether, a little bit of Kalimshan and things. It doesn't really talk a lot about the old world. Milharand talks a little bit about Chesenta, doesn't really talk about Unther or Thay. But yeah, it's got a lot of information in here. So it unashamedly talks about the Forgotten Realms as it is. Talks about naming conventions for taverns and all sorts of stuff. There is definitely cheese today. I'm going to eat another little bit of cheese. This is my reserve stock freezer cheese. This is the one of the ones which I thought was one of the sharpest cheese I ever ate. Robotech was your Palladium game of choice? Excellent. Yeah, actually, the first official gaming professional industry stuff that I did was for Palladium Books. I wrote an article for the Rifter, which got published in Rifter number 23. So that was for the Blade Mage. So I published a character class and a whole bunch of new spells that the Blade Mage could use. Yeah, and that got published and I got paid for it. So that was cool. Orcs or Hobgoblins, AJ? Who has the more threatening army to you? Hobgoblins, definitely. Yeah, for sure, Hobgoblins. Hobgoblins use, like, orcs are a mob. They use brutal pack tactics to overwhelm the enemy. They're very natural fighters, whereas the Hobgoblins use siege machinery. They're very tactically minded. They use ogres, they use mercenaries. So you'll have a Hobgoblin will attack a fort and they'll have giant mercenaries, for instance. And then they'll have squads of goblin sappers and bugbears will be infiltrating and assassinating and doing all sorts of stuff. So yeah, they're really good. I'd be much more worried about a Hobgoblin army than an Orc one. You let your blue cheese expire, sadly, although it's interesting to see that it turns pink when it gets old. Yeah, that's another type of mold which has infested it. That's bad. Thanks for the super chat, Demon Inquisition. These super chats are actually more important now than ever because of the global economic impact of the pandemic has impacted Google ad revenue as well. So I'm making good videos and getting a larger audience than usual because everybody's stuck inside. But ironically, the ad revenue has gone way down because companies just can't afford to advertise right now. What do you do? And also I have to apologise for not putting out 2 videos this week. I only actually put out one, which was on Obox Ob and the Queen of Chaos, but it was kind of a twofer, and I thought it was a really good video, and I put a lot of work into that. It took me a good 3 days to write that script. So I think we did a pretty good job on it, and nobody's really noticed that I didn't put out another video yet. But I thought I'd point out that I have actually started on the second video, which is going to be on flora and fauna. And then, after that, I have notes, which I have lost. Oh, that's right, I left them in. So here are the notes for another video which I'm going to do, which is more of a podcasty, unscripted thing, where I'm talking about encounter design, building encounters, what an encounter actually is, what makes encounters cool, how to put yourself in the headspace to make the best encounter that you can. Do we have a plan or have covered the Cataclysm Dragons? Yes, I absolutely will be covering the Cataclysm Dragons. I am remastering the Dragon series. I've sort of started, and the Dragon Gods video was kind of like the start of that. Well, I redid the Bronze Dragon video, but so I'll be producing more videos on dragons very shortly. Also, I'll be continuing on with the Giant series of videos as well. I might have to skip the Cloud Giant video temporarily, the Storm Giant video, the Frost Giant video temporarily, because I'm waiting for the release of Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. Not Baldur's Gate, Dark Alliance, which the Companions of the Hall video game to come out, which I worked on. Right, yeah, that I really enjoyed making that video because it allowed me to show that over the several years that I've been studying all this stuff, and people have been asking me these questions about cosmology and D&D, it really allowed me to show that I've been paying attention, and there was sort of a thread underneath it all, and I really thought there was areas of lore that need expanding a bit. And I hope everybody would cut me a bit of slack for like coming up with some lore for the original multiverse that the Oberth came from, and what their mindset and stuff is. Because if you go looking through the books and stuff, you're just not going to find that sort of detailed information. Because as I said, the writers just tend to sweep it under the carpet of, it's unknowable. It happened in the age before ages. It's like, it's deep mythology. And it's like, well, people actually want to know this stuff. So yeah, I sort of took liberties there. Can you describe dragon politics? Dragon politics are very central to their identities. So they make alliances and stuff. Think of professional wrestlers, right? Except they take it quite seriously. What's more interesting in dragon politics is the role that their religion takes, because they had a massive civil war that almost resulted in the extermination of their species, thanks to the fickle actions of Bahamut and Tiamat on the world of Toril. These are relatively lesser dragon gods. They seem much greater on Toril itself because that's where they're the most active. So they used Toril as a staging ground for their personal conflict, and it threatened to basically exterminate the dragons there. So the dragons kind of abandoned the dragon gods, and it had a noticeable impact on them. So yeah, it's interesting. Also, dragon souls are not the same as other creatures as well. So you could almost say that their afterlife is actually the prime material plane. They remain active in the prime material plane as energy beings much more so than other creatures. Other creatures just take it for granted that they go to the upper realms when they die. Dragons, not so much. I'm bigger than you, give me money, dragon. Yeah, there's a little bit of that too. So yeah, dragon politics are really interesting. Wow. Okay, I appear to be back. I'm just watching my kilobytes per second counter. It dropped down to 0 for a good 30 seconds there. Now it's up to 2700. Scary bald man. Yeah. Yeah, Vecna is destroying my internet. Yeah. Unfortunately, we've come out of lockdown a little bit, so they've gone back to doing the roadworks hardcore out there, and it is having an effect on the internet. So hopefully that doesn't happen again, but it might do. Did my dragon full of gold coins fall on my router? The router's actually in down a corridor and in a room next door. It's actually in a separate house, believe it or not. AJ Heisenberg. I see you, Sauron. Yeah, we're very tentatively like... So we went out of level 4 lockdown, which basically means everybody stays at home. You only leave the house for essential stuff, like, the supermarkets and things went into massive like overdrive to get everybody, get all their home deliveries done. They started prioritizing people at risk, so over 65s, and people with medical conditions. So they got priority shipping over anybody else, which is great. And now that we're on level 3, the first thing that happened is everybody went flooding to takeaways. So they went flooding to McDonald's, Burger King, Burger Fuel, Kentucky Fried Chicken, various other places, and they basically just flooded these buildings, which resulted in something like 300 prosecutions for people flouting the social distancing rules. And everybody's like sitting there watching TV going, "You idiots!" We're like, "Come on, it's just a fucking burger. Come on, people." Meanwhile, other places are doing the order, click and collect sort of stuff. So they basically just set up drop zones and people order online and then they just put them outside at set times of the day and they come and pick up their orders. No problem. But no, everybody had to have McDonald's. Ugh. It's like, come on, people. Is it really worth it? Our main clusters of infection at the moment, though, there's one particular continuing care unit, an old folks home, which got heavily affected by it, and people that were from there also travelled to and from a hospital, and there was an infection cluster at a hospital, and those are the main ones that we're worried about at the moment. But other than that, we have no people coming into or leaving the country, so that's mainly been the concern. There's talk at the moment of whether we can extend our bubble to Australia and allow it travel between Australia and New Zealand again, and also the Pacific Islands, because we're the hub of the Pacific Islands multicultural movement across the Pacific. And I think that's a viable plan, so that Australasia basically becomes our own quarantine block, which is fine because Australia's got a relatively low number of infections at the moment as well. Yeah, I mean, this certainly solves the haircut problem, right? Absolutely. Wait, y'all have KFC? Yes, we've got KFC. We've got Taco Bell. We've got the whole works. We've got Subway. Everything. We don't have Jack in the Box chicken, though. Chicken restaurants generally don't do very well here because anything that competes against KFC just fails generally. And KFC is struggling at the best of times. Yeah, well, a lot of people don't know how to cook, unfortunately, and that's the people who went flooding to takeaways restaurants, and also just people who really miss having like fast food. I would kill for a pizza, for instance. However, we make do. I've got a garden. I cook my own food. I'm pretty good cook actually. Yeah, Dragon Turtle. There's a lot of that. There's a lot that we don't know. Obviously, when a virus travels around a massive population like it's doing, it's going to rapidly change. Yep, we've got Taco Bell.